Hello and welcome. It's time for more Magnus. I'm stoked. I hope you're stoked. It's pretty late at night, so if I seem a little more tired than normal, that's why. But we gotta talk about Magnus. So this is episode 36, Outside the Box. Our classification number is CAT3RB2153-0408-2024-2805-2024, Entrapment, Virtual, Isolation, Experimentation. Interesting, too, that experimentation is spelled wrong in the transcript. So we haven't talked about case numbers that much. We have to, for the sake of this episode, right? It's going to come up later, the DPHW. I keep trying to say DHPW. The DPHW, I'm going to get it down eventually if I just keep saying it, comes up again. And that phrase hasn't been mentioned since episode 1. We talked about classification numbers a little bit then. I haven't given them a lot of due because I've been trying to understand what the numbers mean, right? Trying to find the correlation between the numbers. There are specific things I was able to hunt down in the weeks leading up to the return of Magnus Protocol to Season 2, but there was nothing that I was like sure of, that I was like, hey, this is it, right? And I still don't have that surety. I'm still not positive on some things, but we do get some clues in here. So I'm gonna put a pin in it for now. We're gonna get back to it at the end of the summary. And then we're going to talk about case numbers for a little bit. And I have a theory from another person that I want to bring up, and I will link their Wiki page that has their theory linked in it because of how good it is and because I think it's probably correct. And also because you should link things when you reference them that are other people's work. Just throwing that out there for some other YouTubers that need to hear it. Anyway, Celia is just working on cases, doing her job. She classifies one as betrayal and nearly breaks. Alice is able to help her out, but she's clearly having a really hard time with this. I saw a lot of people like villainizing and just straight up saying, well, Celia's evil for what she did to Sam. Sure, I understand where you're coming from. People don't really work in just good and evil, right? Everybody's got a reason for everything that they do. It's not always a good reason, but like, she's just doing her best to be there for her son, right? And she made a bad call, maybe she didn't. We'll see how it all turns out. It probably was still a bad call. But it's clearly eating her up, right? And Alice tries at first to work her through it with Inif and Sitsatnaf. I was going to have a really hard time with that. I thought, flip them around, you get words that are normal. But it was fun. Gave her something to think about. It's a very good response when someone's beginning to have a panic attack. Give them something else to focus on. When that doesn't work, Alice goes to the tried and true method. It works so many times. It is beautiful. I don't know who originally came up with the method, but it is so cool. When I was in EMT training, they taught it to us. The countdown, right? 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. I'm not going to say it's perfect and works every time because obviously I haven't seen it every time it's used. But for the most part, somebody's having a panic attack. It's such a great way to try and help them because it makes them focus on something else. My camera just glitched out there and I don't know why. Hopefully that's not on the recording. That was spooky. It's really late while I'm recording this. That was spooky. Especially because we're talking about weird glitches. Anyway, just again, if you know somebody that is prone to have panic attacks or if you're prone to have panic attacks, make sure somebody knows about that because 5 you can see, 4 you can feel, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. It works so well. We call it the countdown, right? Or at least we did when I was an EMT. And it's such a good system. Give somebody something to focus on immediately. There are some other things. This is not what this video is about, but there are some other things that we did too. My favorite, and it's what I still use today when I find myself starting to spiral, is to envision yourself on a snow-covered mountain, covered with polar bears. I think I've brought this up on this series before, and just watching the polar bears walk up and down the mountain. And it just, you find your center again. Everything's going to be okay. Polar bears are just going up and down the mountain. It doesn't always work, but it's helpful. Anyway, that's we should get back to the episode. Celia, having come back down from her panic attack, tells Alice about the portal, and it seems like Alice has figured out what happened, pretty much, that Celia is the reason that Sam went in the portal. They start trying to work through it, and Alice gets lost on a different trail. Celia is not able to pull her back, and Gwen enters before they're able to refocus everything, but Alice is 100% like, well, if we can find it, then, we can go there. It's not the reason why Celia brought that up. But, and Alice is like, it's a portal to hell. It's like, well, Celia knows where that goes. It's not good. But no, Alice definitely gets distracted on the path, right? Then we have the Booth Mark II review from Arlo Slade, and that's our case for this episode. And it's an interesting one. It's about feeling isolated, about being afraid and alone, right? There's a really interesting phrase here, which is the presence of windows or doors in frame may cause the Booth Mark II to have unpredictable results. This thing straight up, traps Arlo Slade. When it sees a window or a door, it seems almost like it consumes them and sticks Arlo in this room. Anyway, the Booth initiation team reaches out. I spent so much time, by the way, tracking down the numbers and the names of the people that were brought up here to try and find some clues. I couldn't find anything. Maybe you can, maybe I just missed something, but I couldn't find anything as to who these people that work for Booth are supposed to be. Either way, this is a really interesting idea, right? A virtual booth that you that you do conference calls with, that makes you feel like you're in the room with somebody, right? Obviously, it's anomalous. Obviously, it's weird because Gregory is able to drop a peach into Arlo Slade's room. And when Arlo tries to move the machine and it sees the door and it sees the window, everything goes bad, right? Gregory gets mad, diminishes to a single point, and is no more. Arlo's a survivalist, focuses on trying to stay alive. Gregory shows up, no idea how long it's been, and says, kill process. This one's done, kill process. And Arlo makes a grab for Gregory's neck, then pulls themselves through after the screen goes black and their fingers are severed. Pulls themselves through and is able to get help, but Gregory's gone, but his ear is still on the ground, right? It's a really weird, interesting case. Teleportation, transportation, different dimensions, different layers of reality almost, right? Really, really interesting there. Entrapment, of course, isolation, but it is an experiment. It's an alpha test, right, for this technology. But it definitely feels like something has been messing with it, right? Is it the lonely that messed with this so that it would eat the doors? Is it the spiral to leave people trapped? Is it instead alchemy? Is it that you are putting something through the process of nigredo, the blackening, right? By putting a soul in there. It could be a lot of things. It's definitely something to remember as we move forward. But by far, the most interesting thing in this episode is when Gwen finally, outright, and directly asks for help. Alice sits down, and they talk about Freddy. They talk about the system. Alice has been doing a lot of digging. She's really starting to get somewhere. Salt Config Manager is brought up. Crontask, that's it, is brought up. And then how the LAN network should not be working. It shouldn't be working at all because of an orphan process that's been left behind. Also, Alice has a really fun dig here about how the parent process must have been, gotten rid of for the sake of character development. That's a great line. That just beautiful stuff. Anyway, where this really gets interesting is the DPHW is brought up. Now, that's not something that a lot of people might have remembered. It came up in episode 1. It's in every episode, but the phrase is not used in every episode. Because, and I quote, "Nah, you can only pick one. Freddy's dumb as rocks." Right. So, after each entry, there's 4 numbers. That's the DPHW. So, dolls, watching is 1157. Then you cross-reference with the table here. That would be a 2C. And then you type that into the box here along with date of incident, if there is one, and today's date, which gives us CAT2RC1157 -1205-2022-0901-2024. And then we hit submit. And so that is from episode 1. That is Alice explaining to Sam how the classification process works, right? In the end of this episode here, we have the DPHW, the integer scale of the four metrics, D, P, H, and W, that all affect or are classifying the cases. Each one is one of these, right? The balance that we've been talking about, the emails that Gwen has been getting that talk about keeping everything in balance, is because the W is out of balance. There needs to be more cases with the W metric to balance it out. Specifically, what we need is more Bonzo. So, let's round out everything here with Celia, and then we will get into the DPHW and my thoughts there. Celia is doing her best to take care of Jack. Georgie is a huge help. Georgie is so wonderful. But Georgie also asks about Sam. And when Celia tries to play it off, Georgie brings up how Sam had his own Netflix account, or Netflix, profile on Celia's account. And Georgie is trying to help Celia move on, but Celia's starting to spiral. And Celia, I think, is going to break before too long. Something very bad, I think, is going to happen to Celia. And I don't want that to happen because I like Celia. I want to see her and Sam move past this and either continue as friends, which would be fine, or to continue with something more, which I would be super fine with. But let's talk about these classifications. So, there are a couple things that are very important here. We don't have the binder, right? So without the binder that all of it is in, with the table in there to be able to cross-reference everything, we are working with part of the information, right? You can go to the wiki, you can find all of the case numbers that have been brought up before on the Magnus Protocol wiki. I'll leave a link to that in the description. It'll also have a link to the Klaus.xls document from the ARG. The ARG is still something I don't feel comfortable yet explaining because somebody else did all that work, not me. I'm not super happy about having to bring up other people's work here because I didn't put that work in. I don't want anybody to attribute this to me, right? But it's important to bring it up here. And so Bonzo's #1 fan put in a ton of work on this. Again, the link will be in the description where you can follow up with the wiki and that document to be able to find some more stuff about it. But in the ARG, instead of DPHW, it was TSHU, which specifically Bonzo's #1 fan believes to be Tot Schmerlich. Why did I try to pronounce these? My family's German too, and oh man. Hilflosigkeit. That's not it. It's Hilflosigkeit and Unheimlich, right? Or in English, death, painfulness, helplessness, and weirdness. Now again, these are not confirmed. This is a theory of someone else. It's not my theory. I did not come up with this. If it winds up being true, Bonzo's #1 fan did all of it. It was not me. But I think that's really interesting to consider because if that's the case, Bonzo would make a lot of sense as the weird, right? The W. Also, we don't have the table to have the letter number. Like here it's, in this case, it's RB, right? 3RB. We don't have that, right? But RB is used in a bunch of cases. I believe it's like 30 of them. And a lot of them that it's used in have to do with transformations or something strange. So like the first RB is the entire series of events about the transformation with the first tattoo with Inksoul, which is very interesting because if RB has to do with transformations, then it would also explain that Bonzo is a transformation of some sort, that he was once something else, maybe, whether a puppet or a man that was put into a costume. And like our recent episode where we had the big fan of Bonzo, not to be confused with Bonzo's #1 fan, that got into a suit and the suit felt like it was tightening around them, like they were maybe becoming another Bonzo. That would make a lot of sense. Also, a lot of the new you statements have RB as a classification, which is really interesting. Again, we don't know for sure what it's referencing. Some of them have like RBC, 2RB, or 3RB. But, for instance, another 3RB, like the one that we have here in this episode with the Booth Mark II, is the dice that happened in episode 9, rolling with it. So, just something interesting there. Another interesting thing is, because we have the list of known numbers from the wiki, we can see that there are a few that are kind of similar to what our current number is. So our current number with this one is 2153, right? Entrapment, isolation, right? 2153. 2155 is a transformation. 2275 is a mascot. So what is the correlation here? We don't have the table, and it makes it really tough. But the dice, for instance, is 3354. And this is why I haven't brought these up before, because there's not a lot that I can tell you, because we don't have all of the pieces. We know that in this case, whatever the W stands for, if it stands for weird, if Bonzo's #1 fan is right and it stands for weird, whatever the W stands for, Bonzo is that as well, right? So then if we go back to the Bonzo cases, the letter correlation here for the very first Bonzo case is 1RB, right? Then if we go to the next Bonzo case, which is episode 12, it's 1RB. Is 1RB the reference point to Bonzo, specifically to a mascot, to a weird, uncanny Valley style, this is a thing that should be able to bring joy, and it isn't, and we need more weird cases? Because if so, some of those others that are RBs don't necessarily fit there, right? Like Needles, I believe, is an RB. Let me double check that real quick. Yeah, Needles is a 1RB. And our most recent episode with Minky that had Bonzo referenced in there, that's also a 1RB. So does 1RB reference specifically Uncanny Valley? Things that should be human but aren't? Is that the reference point here? Because if it is, and we look at other 1RBs, we have, as I said, Needles. We have Bonzo. We have Bonzo again. And then we have Pet Project, episode 14, with the snakes. We have episode 15, Well Run, with Lady Mowbray. We have episode 16, Antisocial, with Ink Soul, yet again. It's really interesting to me. Then, of course, I want to mention all of these here. I'm sorry. Raising Issues, 24, with the Demon Baby. I feel like we're so close to getting it. Also, episode 26, the athlete that runs, Jared, and exhausts himself. Those are all 1RBs. So, like, is it close to human but not quite? Remember, Jared was being chased by something. Close to human but not quite? Is that what it is? I feel like we're right on the cusp of it, right? We're almost there. But what are we missing? What are we missing, you know? I don't know. I feel bad, again, bringing up somebody else's theory on the channel. I don't think it's right to be airing other people's stuff out without properly accrediting it to them. So yet again, remember, please, Bonzo's #1 fan did all this work. It was not me. But here's where we're at, right? If 1RB is supposed to reference anything here, is it the stranger? Because 1RB, Bonzo, then we have Needles, then we have the Demon Baby, we have Minky, which is more Bonzo, we have Jared running. I don't know. It's really hard to say, and it makes me want to go back and find all the other, like, what is 2RB from episode 25, Gut Feelings, where the man eats and eats and eats. What is the difference between 1RB, if that's the stranger, and 2RB to be something else, you know? I don't know. I don't know. I'm really interested in somebody else that maybe has figured it out that I haven't, but then again, it'll just be me parroting somebody else's work that they put in. Like the snakes, is that the stranger? Lady Mowbray's not stranger, right? She's the slaughter, right? The hunt. She's the hunt for sure. She's not the slaughter. Is it? Because I want to say 1RB could stand for, like, the fears. Okay, so Editor Trey here had a thought. I'm not 100% on this. I'm still workshopping it, but the green tree's not even set up. We got to talk about this. So, what if 1RB is specifically the classification for externals? The only case that doesn't line up for is 26, catching up. Jared running from error, right? That one doesn't make as much sense because I don't think error was an external unless maybe it was the first external. But that would explain Mowbray. That would explain Needles. That would explain Inksoul. That would explain Bonzo. Unless it's specifically avatars that 1RB is referencing, in which case everything there, snakes, I guess, an outlier on both now that I think about it, but the snakes could be an avatar, right? That it could be a reference to the avatar that is the man full of snakes, right? What if that's what it is? 1RB is specifically representing avatars, and that's where that classification comes in. Just something to think about. But not all of them that I'm pretty sure were a fear represented have been 1RBs either. I feel like we're so close. Mowbray's like a big standout to me. Because Mowbray is definitely the hunt. I don't know. We're still missing something, you know? And I don't know what it is, but we're still missing something. Because even if we go with, hey, DPHW, that doesn't stand for Bonzo's theory of death, painfulness, helpfulness, weirdness, right? Maybe instead it stands for... man, I don't know. I can't just sit here and come up with a bunch of these. Death would make too much sense for the D. But again, you can't even see which one it's referencing in the number until we have that clue that ties in the classification number, like 1RB, 2RB, the C's, right? 2RC for give and take. Until we have that, we don't know for sure what they're all referencing, right? How do you get those different designations? There's still a big clue that we're missing to make sense of all of it. But I feel like we're starting to get close, and I'm very excited. I've rambled long enough, probably. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I feel like all I did was just ramble for the last 10 minutes, but I'm so stoked about the connections that I want to finish connecting them. My brain needs all of it to fit into a little box. That's what my brain needs. And I feel like we're right on the cusp of the box, and we're not quite there, you know? So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum that Magnus Protocol has to offer.